all about whole brain functioning. It's pretty amazing. It was for me a long time ago just to notice that, of course, it made sense to me that if somebody's in a pleasant or interesting state, wouldn't it be that they would have access to the whole of themselves versus if they were in not a whole brain state, like in interest and pleasure, that something would be going on which would perhaps to have diminished the processing of the brain and things. So this was something that I felt, and that was what I ended up studying at New York University. And it was a time frame which no such thing was any discipline that someone could have, like neurology, behavior, and physiology. So neurobehavior physiology was what it was for me to coin this and go across a few departments at the university and be able to do a degree more in this area. And it was for me to find what I would study. I wanted to study, pleasure and aversion, and what goes on where you are in a state of pleasure and aversion, and what, as if the neurology of the brain was involved where this is. It was for me to discover, of course, that the left hemisphere is more involved in the mediation of pleasure and the right hemisphere is more involved in the mediation of aversion. And these were things which most could maybe not look into the brain at the time, not at all. And single positron electron tomographic types of equipment were being invented, which would be able to see blood flow and things as you thought. And so starting to look at moving pictures inside the brain as you're thinking and looking at what areas of the brain are being involved where you're thinking. And so this caused me to look and consider that there was easy ways that you could look at the outside of the body and where accessing cues are, where anybody goes to get information that's beyond their present sensory awareness. Typically, we would go through an accessing cue to access the information. And so you could calibrate those accessing cues. You could see what areas of the brain someone was using and things. And I developed an instrument that you could sit down and fill out. And you could be observing someone's behavior, and you could give them the degree to which they're more in whole brain patterning versus limited mind functioning. And that took me some 19 years of research, because I couldn't just get a degree as a quant. I had to get a degree much more in qualitative investigation, and that takes another degree itself. So some 19 years it was for me, investigating this. So whole brain functioning comes along. Annie, Jubb, and I, from the early 80s onwards, are really working with Cloud, 2 children, and slow but sure, this father really takes behaviour intricately that's linked and puts together a full taxonomy of our sensory motor complex, which hadn't been done before, and incorporating the vestibular sense, which most people hadn't any idea about, which is your meta sense over the top of every other sense. So words in language that predicate a whole body movement are vestibular predicates, predicating the vestibular sense. So forward, back, up, down, on, off, whole body movements, aren't they? And they do predicate to the vestibular sense, just like we're going to get or have, which is kinesthetic. And the sound of the words that we're using to discuss dimension today and talk about this is auditory. And to get a bigger picture, to get the frame of reference, to have the ability to be able to perceive and look at what's bright, these are words which predicating the visual system. And so worded words which predicated the vestibular sense, like I said, are the whole body movement types of words and action. And these are meta, meaning above all the other senses. Anyway, at some point it's possible for us to talk a lot more about the vestibular sense, though I just would mention that here because it engages and directs a static magnetic condition that we have in the B field of ourselves, as well as dynamic current and communication, where it's observed that you're in an integrated, congruent, and associated state. It's how you're using the vestibular sense which allows you to be this way or not. So for most of us, really, behavior is really something which it seems to be very nebulous. It was a problem for people thinking about what I would do, because I would think, well, how do you study behavior? How do you get, counting behavior, you see? So those were things which was to become a far deeper science during this period of time. And so you could look at whole body movements eventually, which I learned how to do from Cloud, to be able to calibrate the relation of the inner brain activity during the time in which you're, in this behavior. And looking at keys in how your brain's ability is to have a great capacity to be able to adapt and give good ability to refine responses, and a functional structural plasticity is supposed to be there. And in your original state, your brain is really quite good and can pick patterns out and things. But slow but sure, somebody gets in there and they start doing things where their brain is, and that functional plasticity, which is supposed to be, isn't like what it should be, you see. So, for instance, someone who you gave them a stereogram and they're in whole brain function, pretty much it's amazing that these are people who can pick patterns out of the stereogram, versus where someone's more in an aversive state, it's not so easy for them, and sometimes they're not even able to pick the pattern out at all. So that's an interesting thing you should take yourself through to see where you are in your functional plasticity about to pick patterns out. I certainly could often be amongst 100 people or something where we would be doing things and you could tell some of those people amongst us would be so extraordinary in their ability to be able to pick patterns out, you see. And everybody would be coming to them to get information and what have you. And they typically would be, for some reason, very, very astute and far more able to have tracked things. So as you're picking up things from them, how did they do this? Eye awareness really is where you're empty inside and you simply have care, simple, and there is no internal dialogue. So it's really not a technique whatsoever. None of this is. It's sort of really a way of being and not a state of mind. And so as someone goes through where this training is ever more in eye awareness and whole brain functioning, eye awareness really is where you have an empty center, and that describes what's absolute with space, and matter is what you care about, what the matter is, and care. And so I am is just I care, simple. So I is empty and care is matter. And you've got rid of internal dialogue. So who is real is you who has awareness over perception, not just sensation itself, but awareness over the top of that sensation. And so something is certainly real more, and something is fictional. You've got a rabbit, which is certainly living in a rock, which isn't, and they can't be put into the same category. And if you did that, you'd be running into fascism, which the world is. So those are things which should be corrected and would be corrected, definitely, because it's just an aberration where things are. And so you and I, we have an innate predisposition, and pre, meaning before, cognition, meaning before thinking. You and I, we all have a set which sets off the way that you are going to be about processing information. And preferred whole brain functioning patterning is more kinesthetic, auditory, visual. You're having the ability to go from one sense to another. And it's a preferred sense that you are in your feelings better. And then you're hearing and listening, and then you're seeing things. And you, if you're like me, will suddenly start to be listening and hearing everyone's predicate. How are they using the predicates? How are you using the vestibular sense? And slowly but surely you become more superconscious. And these are things which, oh my God, is seriously going to be able to help the medicine woman or the medicine man and help you in life where you are. So you could see that behavior could be heard, of course. You could listen to word and what the tempo, the rhythm, the pitch, the intonation, the cadence, volumes of shift, all sorts of things there is auditory. And you could give a score by knowing whole brain patterning, the degree to which somebody is more living their life, and you're giving them a score more in whole brain functioning. And this is something which is learnable. And so IQ also isn't too fixed or not too scientific per se, because it's not as reliable as what it might be. Because why? Well, because somebody could learn, and as you learn, it's possible, of course, you've got a greater, higher IQ. So you've got neuroimaging techniques which come along, of course, the fMRI and the EEG, sort of all our great observations ever more into brain activity, as you or I or anyone is in unique behavior in the moment of it, and watching and seeing how the brain is functioning as you're in this. And so the instrument in whole brain functioning gives anyone a capacity of ongoing to be able to see these things, like incredible. You'd have to, could you program a computer how you could program your brain? It's like, wow. So functional magnetic resonance imaging measures changes in blood flow whilst in your thinking. I mean, who's availed themselves of all the study, that sort of thing, to get a very good idea of what's indicative of the type of neural activity which could cause someone to have, for instance, you've really got great spatial resolution and spatial awareness, where some people can, I don't know, they don't have too good spatial resolution awareness. According to a whole range of institutes that have studied now more to confirm these things, you've got studies which certainly have looked at exceptional brain function, and it's very unique from regular brain function, because there's 3 centers which are silent where exceptional brain functioning is. And somebody could learn about how do you get these areas of your brain to be silent more, so you're very receptive and you're just in the moment, incredibly skillful, and where aptitude is, where something is. So somebody comes, they do a reading, you can listen to hear, you could hear through the intonation, the pitch, the rhythm, the tone, where sound is resonating in the body. What is the areas and things that somebody comes out with? What's the note, more or less, that someone is in? All of this is extraordinary, because you can have echolocation and be able to hear from the sound what's behind the sound and things. And then you're listening, of course, and catching how someone is communicating themselves. And this is just unbelievable, because you can pace what this is, so you've got far better capacity about to have rapport with people. So the techniques which you could pick up, it's incredible, and I'm just giving you a journey into a beginning that it's possible to have a deeper insight into whole brain functioning and identify various regions of the brain which is active during specific behavior more. because you've got somebody who's got a behavioural manifestation of that internal response. A beamer is a nice way to remember that. Behavioural manifestation of an internal response. And you're always knowing that communication is the response that you're getting back, not what you've said, but your response that you're getting back. So it behooves me to be always ultimately responsible where I am, because it's the response that I'm getting back, and that's the effective communication. So whole body calibration gives you a greater capacity to observe body part and whole body movement. So body part is proprioceptive, whole body movement is vestibular. And so you could look at proprioceptive and vestibular movement as accessing cues, which are gone to access information that's beyond anyone's present sensory awareness. You go through a series of movements, sort of more or less, to access that, and calibrating these movements to the internal neurological centers that's being used where you're in your behavior. So you're calibrating behavior, which relates to a concept, and your whole focus is your understanding of neural plasticity can be existing where someone's in their frontal cortex, where interest and pleasure is, you're going to be getting into your frontal cortex, where aversion is, you're remaining more or less around the brain stem. And so it could be predicted, of course. You could be listening, and if you could hear a lot of don't, won't, can't, should, try, but, must, only, and never and always, and the speech isn't like slightly slurred or rolling along a little, so you feel really relaxed. But the speech is far more, you're going to do this now, and it's going to be very clipped. Okay, so language like that triggers the amygdala and tegmentum, and gets you just hovering a bit around your brainstem. And a cute trick that somebody would do if they had done that would be to cause you, well, it's not a cute trick, but to only be in the back of your brain, maybe, but not, but mostly just being in and around the brainstem, but certainly not in whole brain patterning, and mostly just only sort of like slightly right hemisphere activation and a shutting down of the left hemisphere. So where somebody is in interest and pleasure, you have your faculty to inspire creative influence of the future there, and new information is brought in, and so that's logged, and then when you rest and dream, it gets transferred to the back of the brain. It's possible that just by not studying this, but just by listening to the podcast and things, it's possible for you to start to have of yourself ever more exceptional brain function automatically. So the words that we're using, things like this, but you've got a non-verbal going on where everything is as well. And could you learn how to ever more bring your non-verbals and body language ever more behind what you're doing? So there's a parallel type of a processing. And so you could say first, everyone's going to get a bit of a score for, are you really here today? How much is it that you're present? You know, when you connect with someone, can they tell that you're empty to be receptive of them? Or is it that every time they see you, Cam, you're really in internal dialogue, wow, and totally unreachable. So it's just, what is it that somebody is transferring, and we get contact conditions ourselves where you are. And so it behooves people to really have a sachem, which is keeping company of like-minded people around you so as you can start to be more spiritually growing. So EEGs allow people to observe the brain activity. All this starts to correlate. These functional magnetic resonance imaging all starts to correlate with these findings. You're looking to see that you could absolutely predict more or less what areas of the brain, calibrated-wise, someone is using. So you could start to understand and see where someone's coming from memory, or no, they're not coming from memory. This is not anything they had any memory about, and they're constructing what is existing in things. There's just it's no end actually to realize that hypnosis and the power of induction is so important that if you're not aware of these things, what sort of skill could you be having that you've started to become really skillful in this area? So this is the trainings that we did for many years and ongoing, and up to the day still doing, training and things where people are. So it's everything is really perfect, and a podcast like this is really possible for someone to be able to more be woken and be more aware and be more eye aware. And rejuvenation itself is very important because a whole range of conditions which you could learn about, cystic fibrosis, for instance, has such a marked overall condition on the physiology and what sorts of behaviours and all sorts of things get triggered ever more where someone has a condition like cystic fibrosis, for instance, because whole brain patterning and functioning can be compromised a lot more. In the very beginning where this work was, I would teach and have Fortune 500 companies all. And so this father really did trainings and coaching and body reading all over the United States and other countries, and basically did experiential-based trainings and taught what this is through Cloud 2 children. And I studied with her for some 9 years in the very beginning of coming over to the United States. But time it would be for me to train and then go to other nations, Australia, of course, Canada, Europe, Mexico, Brazil. I could just think of quite a few nations that I went to. But the preferred modes of sorting information allow you to be able to live more in the whole of yourself, and you could be picking up what the meta patterns are more of whole brain functioning versus limited mind function. And so these would be the things which successfully being installed could give you ever more exceptional brain function and studied. And just I can be, a program to be considered once somebody knew what this was, be focused on what the benefits are, so incredible. And empirical clinical evidence is really behind this. So it's not just, willy-nilly, but the brain creates an internal model of the world, and one has to know, how is it that your brain has caused that internal model, of course, through generalization, deletion, and some sort of construction that's gone on. And there's 3 areas that you could look at to see, well, these are the things that everybody does use to make a map, but the map is only an approximation of reality, and to what degree is it that you've got a context? So most unscientific people are, oh my God, they're only blurting out something which begins somewhere, but they have got no idea that didn't begin there. Something was before that, and something was after it. And so in forensics, of course, you're really focused on what's before and what's afterward, because these are the things that's pretty much missing out, where most everybody is wrong. Why? Because they didn't bother to look to see what was the cause of things and what happened, like to cause a war, for instance, and who was behind all of this. And why wouldn't you want to know about the world? Why would you just be thinking one place is of itself, which it's not whatsoever? And, so you become a lot more aware, of course. So successful application is for you to learn ever more, to have exceptional brain function, and it's possible for you to wire in ever more new movement experience. And now the brain can conceive new possibility. So movement is the broadest pathway for programming the brain. And movement, wiring in a new movement experience now is how your mind can conceive new possibilities. So a synesthesia is, well, we could be talking about like growing plants in a garden, and various plants like a tomato plant, for instance, and how this tomato plant, this loves the feeling of the day. So that's a complex equivalent for me to say that a tomato plant could feel, but you're attaching to ongoing experience. Oh yeah, that's me. So synesthesias are used, and these allow a technique which can assist course changing of behaviour. So it's that something else is getting processed in another set, and parallel processes in a somewhat, but totally in a different set. And this is what and how the brain changes and shifts things around. But you've to be able to put the scientific pieces below, so now it's going to work. So, for instance, if you know that pasteurize is off the chart, and Louis lied like crazy in the research that he did, and there was no such thing as any urine flasks that were cooked out crazy that didn't become turbid. Every single one of them did. So there's a big lie. So suddenly, science becomes corrected, doesn't it? Now you're looking at the world in a different way than the average person would, which could have got a piece of information that's wrong scientifically below, and that then has shaped everything above. And so this work is more looking at the very things that you've got more below and precognitively, and so that you have a greater opportunity to be able to predict and have good sensory consequence where the actions are where you are, and to have a great capacity to have empathy, which is really just calibrating someone else's experience and being able to, and your own, and giving you a greater state of awareness, because you're looking at analog as well as dialogue, and you're able to sculpt the analog more to be able to change state and things. So in whole brain functioning technology, somebody really is allied to change and get change automatically now, you see? Yeah, because you don't have to think about things. And you're looking at the syntax, which is non-lexical, for instance. What's that mean? It means not spoken, not words. But sure it is. It's a syntax of a sensory motor complex, the same as anything, lexical is. And you've got a syntactical intelligence and a non-lexical intelligence as well as a lexical intelligence. So it's really transforming you ever more and shifting the world more into a golden age, that you can see a logarithm that's existed, and that 78% of yourself has to be before something, and then that's going to get passed on, and you can have a certain percentage like against that, like you could have up to 22% against something, and it's still going to get passed on. See, because you've got a logarithm, and so how you're manifesting things in your life really does relate more to what internal response are you having, and how conscientious are you where you are thinking about what you would do, and you're logging these things, and you're continuously doing what you can to be able to be on track evermore, until a moment evermore is you become so empty inside, and you're able just to do everything way more without having to have all that inner dialogue. And so modifying your experience to be able to give yourself a greater capacity to be empty, you're going to be far more able to pick up information and get feedback ever more. And you're really gaining valuable insight right now, of course, as you're listening to this, and how the brain is calibrating various interaction and continuously adapting to like this functional plasticity. And as you've got this functional plasticity, the program that we've been talking about today is more, you've got a greater capacity to be able to pick patterns out. So the world around you is a training, isn't it? Ongoing, and it's no technique. How good is that? And you're in this outward live meditation as you're quietening everything down to be empty and be living more in perfect detachment, which is having awareness and simply not having any bias anymore. And so you're learning how to cause a recalibratedness of perception and have a greater consistency where you've got what we call a JC quantum in language, meaning you can't have past and a vague and wordedness which doesn't add up. You've got to have in a document a true noun. You can't just be running around with pronouns, which doesn't describe anyone, and no title comes from a pronoun, but no rights come from a pronoun. Only a duty does, or some responsibility. But you who is living, this is your title. That's our species of woo man. And when you use another word like you're a drive whore or something, well, that's an occupation. Is that your identity? No, generally. Okay. So if you've got a remarkable capacity which you do to create change and also be an agent evermore to assist to cause change in the world, you're picking up whole brain functioning learning, and you might go and get into the Path of Hollow Bones, which there's some great learning there. There's 5 manuals that you could pick up from jubbdavid.com by going there. So you're reorganizing yourself and forming new neural connection, and you now evermore have a greater neural plasticity, which you're becoming aware of this. And this is allowing learning and memory formation to be ever more state-specific, so that your adaptedness to some new environment or situation evermore is enhancing and embellishing things so that you're picking things up far quicker. So if a brain, as we're focusing on this right now, has been recalibrated, and so that you're focused ever more on interest and pleasure, and you're noticing how relaxed your shoulders are, you're noticing how your stomach is nice and relaxed, and your heart, and you're keeping a focus on these things. So you're managing it. You're experiencing everything more by watching and looking, and you've got far better, greater capacity about to have 3-dimensional images hypnagogically be able to be put. Why? Because you're not. You're avoiding 4 timing and 4 beat, because that's only going to give you 8 overtones from your brainstem. You need at least 13 overtones there, right, to be able to form a rose. And so what's the reason why you're not able to sort of see images more or less like you could? Well, because you've probably just been listening to 4 beat, 4 timing. You don't know that. And so after that, it's very squared out, and you've got a brain freeze. And so that's what 4 hertz sort of does. It creates sort of brain freeze. And what's the usefulness of that? Well, it dissolves whatever was, and so whatever comes in next after this, which makes sense, is what becomes imprinted evermore. So you've got an awareness which is over perception, and this is I aware. But it's not perception itself like wakefulness, which is a limited phenomenon only of 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information at any one period of time. So you and I, we have awareness over perception, which is not perception itself. Perception itself is sensation, and who is real is aware of perception, you see. So it's consistent evermore as you look into a JC Quanta and learn more about the smallest pixelated dot in space and things, that you've got a grand unified totality, and that's called gut. And so it's not a theory. So you're really able to quickly pick up pattern far better. You're capable to adapt to change more. And so who's got the greatest flexibility where you are? This is going to be the controlling element more in some system where things are. But what's internal that's driving you, that's calibrated more to a living metaphor? And could that be that only one group more or less controls all the nations of the world? Yes, that's correct. And so should you know that? Yes, you should. Are you and I above all of that? Yes, we are. And where is that? You're above the Legislative Assembly where you sit with an Article 3 or Article 4 court. Why don't we learn about that? But so the metaphor that you're using and the thoughts that you have for a republic at peace, for instance, and positive inductive currency versus negative, which is wrong and also illogical. So thoughts and emotion that you have and actions really interpret our sensory input, and processing where memory is dictating the response more or less, an experience, and wiring in ever more a new way to be where you don't have need. So if you don't have need, well, okay, so you don't have any more pain, you see. So we're learning to how do you go about bringing things which is more with listening. And so a listener is going to be there more where she or he, you'll be giving choice. And so it's better to use modal operator as a possibility. Like, I wonder if this, so maybe it could be, versus you don't, or can't, should, try, but must only. So you're really looking to see what the benefit is of whole brain functioning. My God, it's just natural and normal, and everything else is sort of something that's like Pavlovian conditioning. You had to be conditioned to be that way. So you'd have to uncondition that sort of thing. So calibrating behavior, you could imagine, is incredible because you're able to pace various things more as concept toward who's listening. You're able to put things more in terms of a whole brain patterned way. So you've got ever more neuroscience and cognitive science behind the installation of new material so that you're getting a new behavior generator installed, and that this is going to be triggered ever more as you're looking around and seeing things where you are, and it just triggers this state ever more automatically for you. So this is just happening now, you see, and how relaxed your shoulders are, your tummy and things. So you're calibrating your brain usage and functional activity, and there's a neural efficiency quotient. Yeah, right. Might you learn a bit more about that. But allowing researchers and study to have a proper brain behavior relation. And so how could you not have this? And now you've got proper developed targeted intervention where you are to be able to change things, you see? Yeah? Because like where IQ is, you've got a lot more ability to be able to look at superstition, for instance. If a nation has very low IQ, it is way more superstitious for sure, which you can understand. So memory is used to distract maybe today, which it shouldn't. You've got attentional deficit sorts of hyperactive disorders, which is a metabolic condition, not a neurotransmitter. And ADHD is more cystic fibrosis. Learn about it. Okay, so you're finding correlations where you've got differences where brain structure is in function, and behavioural symptoms where disorder is really found ever more that, hey, why shouldn't you have a bit more optimism? Do you know what I mean? Do you know that where somebody's got a more optimistic, they're way more associated with the lower risk to death group. So is it all right that somebody could be more optimistic and they actually portray this in their life versus so pessimistic? It's like, oh my God, how much is that affecting everyone around when this person just opens their mouth? So one could be more compassionate. Of course, compassionate communication is far better than any antipsychotic drug. So like someone could learn how to be way more compassionate in their own communication. So as you're looking at things, you're able to have compassion versus, oh, I'm taking that personal. This is really bad. I'm going to give you a drug because, you know, what you're doing is like throwing a shoe at the door. So you need to be drugged. So terrible. The most violence is where people are dissociated, distracted, they interrogate and they intimidate. Those are the big violence things people are doing inside to others and themselves. And so shouldn't it be that you're more optimistic because you're going to be associated more to a lower risk death group? See, research where you go and look into all this shows, of course, good mood really correlates more with a long life. So when you look inside somebody and you find a heart Do you have to look inside everybody else? Or you find a heart in somebody, you go, okay, everybody has a heart. How good is that? Let's get your reasoning and everyone else's right. So if you correlate a long life, you're going to have neural efficiency far better. So if you remain youthful, you're keeping yourself active. Like if you don't, like, oh no, I'm going to just sit here, that's it, finished. And I'm going to lay here, that's it, finished. And so you're in a strike mode, you're on strike, and you withdraw yourself, you withdraw. It's like, oh wow, what a control freak, please. So if you remain youthful, you're keeping yourself active, and you really is one of the most single predictors of a long life is your cardiorespiratory fitness, is things like what you're talking to students about, that they've achieved a greater measured VO2 maximal sort of oxygen uptake. And then why don't you have a little bit of a look at people's facial expressions? Yeah, our face is extremely expressive, isn't it? If you have an inner smile, you have an inner happy face, it's going to convey countless benefits to you, way beyond having a smirk or chip on your shoulder. So is it all right that you could be optimistic, or no, you're the most pessimistic person I know. Your name is you're Jay Dead, and you've got all this sort of stuff, and you're so attracted to frozen logos. And so people like, kind of, one person recently just stole our logo and put it with some useless, crazy stuff. And I'm talking to people who think that they know as much as I do. Well, okay, or better, and even more. And so, like, somebody's just stole our, logo just recently, so I've got to get that back. But it's attached to stuff which is crazy, and you've got, who did that is just somebody just like so needing to be more congruent themselves. So body part calibration and gives you a window into the internal matrix of the mind, and some facial expressions and body movements and things. All is a human sense of expressivity, and our whole body calibration gives you a greater inward read on how you could convey very things where countless emotion is without saying a word. You could have a greater, stronger connection between teamwork and members on the team and things. You have a greater capacity to have efficient conflict resolution and involving a process ever more of sending information without relying on spoken word per se. So you've got these non-verbals, and it's really quite significant. You've got cues, access to cues which you could learn how to read, which allows you to process and be able to pick up information ever more yourself and know what more about what is happening. You could tweak things so that you've gained a lot more flexibility in the way that you're framing things that you do. Like, I wonder if maybe, like we went over, you're giving people choice versus don't want to or try but must only, never, always. And so you've got three choices in math, that's it, and response. Two of those choices are congruent choices, and one is polarization. And you can get everything done with the first two choices. My God, yes, you can. Are you going to get anything done with polarization? No, not really. You could. It just means, hey, you need to have choice a bit more about what you're doing because something didn't work because somebody polarized. But how about if somebody just only polarizes? They have no idea that there's two other ways to respond. So every time that they'll respond, it's just no or yes. And it's like in a bucket. Something is on or something is off. And when it's off, it's off. It's like, oh, wow, this is terrible. See, and don't, won't, can't, should, try, but must only, never, always, only, ever. And it's really brain stemmy, and it's less than allowing proper frontal cortex activity. There's none, where somebody is in a state like that. Okay, so this is the research which I've done, and you can value this as you listen to it, because where did you go to hear this before? I want to know. Is there someone that you're listening to, or it's just content sorters? Time, place, name, time, place, name, which is very boring. This is why most people are just like, oh my God. So most people don't want to touch or connect much with their family because it's very boring, and it's most because nobody there might be really good at being on the stage. And oh my God, are you going to be okay where you're trying to express and give someone a memory that you've had? No, they're going to kick you off the stage. Are you trying to have some experience that you had or something, and you're going to try to relay that to people? It's like, oh my God, you're going to get kicked off the stage. Why? Because it's too content-y. It's not structural. So a good stage person, or good in comedy or anything, they've really got good structure, and it's not, word salad, like just a bit of this, bit of that. So eye awareness really is where you've gone beyond wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. That's right. And you've got awareness over perception, imagined or real, where you imagine something, the body's going to perceive this as if it's real. Eye awareness is over the top of perception, and so you're really looking at how you could imagine something where the brain is evaluating ever more against some sort of reality threshold. So if you imagine the signal is strong enough, of course, to cross over this threshold, your brain can interpret things as real. Otherwise, it's going, it's a hypochondriac type of a noise that needs to be erased. Like, wow, I'm dying because little Poles are attacking me, or little Germans are attacking me, which is wrong. But people can have all sorts of things in their brain, can't they? So the allergy, where it is, could be changed. Yeah, that's right. Because you can have a totally new movement experience wired in, so that allergies and things like that can be changed, so you're getting a better condition overall. So the region that's crucial for memory, and also really plays a role in constructing mental representation, is where you're in your unsleeping, dreamy, wakeful state. Awareness is above those three states, you see. So dreaming takes us into a post where the cortex, where recall doesn't have any connection between memory, and that's what deep sleep is. And so it should be more like you've got a brain like this during the day, because it's ever more empty and receptive, and now you're able to truly get things done. So if we're driving our imagination and everyone by being empty more, or you're really in there doing a lot of stuff, it's being in the flow, and where you're in the bush, you're playing, you've got whole brain functioning ever more, and during a mind like this, it is able to wander and daydream, and these are things which help blend, and you could really be contributing ever more to imaginative type of thinking. So whole brain functioning really is about pleasure and interest, inhibiting the aversive neurology and creating ever more whole brain patterning. And you can see the brain's executive centers assisting you, helping plan and cause decisions that you've got coming up ever more to be better. And it's not how many things you start there, that's right, but what are you finishing and completing? And how well formed are you, your statements and things that you're making? So manipulating mental images and ensuring that mental simulation resembles reality ever more. It's a pleasure and also an interest, really, that you've got regions of your frontal cortex, and information is only going to be stored in this prefrontal cortex, and then it's stored in the postmotor cortex area after sleep. And so now you've got memory for the next day. And so what happens when you eat a steak? It's not going to help. What happens when you eat beans? It's not going to help. That's another story, though, you see. And so genius is vegetarian. There is no one who's been a genius that hasn't been a vegetarian. So most all of the geniuses in the world that we know of are vegetarians, and a lot of these famous people too, like Joan of Arc, Helena Troy, lots of these people. So the role in your deciding what's real and what's imagined and what's real is felt by the body the same way. And so if you're on a hill and you've got the brake on, you don't want to be rolling back, and all of a sudden you see the car beside you moving forward, you're pushing your foot more on the brake because you've only thought in your ingrained predicament that you've slipped back, which that didn't happen, you see. So it's a strong activation of the areas during imagination. It's anchored states become triggered more and increase the likelihood that you could have something, or you could have a mistake made. So it's really, why don't you wire in ever more proper response? It's a strong activation of the areas of your brain during imagination where anchored states like that get triggered ever more. It's more likely that you've got sticky factor for remembering what works, or you've been mistaking images for what's real, and imagined signals in the brain could have been so strong that it blurring the lines between imagination and reality, you see. And so a potential sort of hallucination could have been going on. But doesn't that describe groupthink? And shouldn't groupthink be what should be, like what's better, but it might not be actually? And so it's taking away your own individuality about things, where the groupthink isn't how it should be. So you're following what's social in that circumstance versus, hey, that's not really ethical what you're doing. So it's a strong engagedness where reflexive feeling is in life, Lukey, and that the listener for him was really moving more forward in a flow and getting rid of tension and being able to respond more with a voice which is relaxed more, and now you're getting more relaxed back. But you'll notice that when somebody has a pattern of tension, they're in the note of A, they really talk really fast, they're not really aware of perception, they often put themselves up to be the top of the list, and they're really acting in a way that's actually pretty immature usually. So the frontal musculature of the reflex of the thymus, where your thymus gland is, it's in the front of your chest. If you've got feeling good of going forward, you're not going to have any reflexive much musculature-wise in the reflex of your forwardness, and so tension wouldn't be where your thymus gland is. So everything is connected, you see. So your ability to determine what you and what's not you, and what stress is certainly not you. You and I, we are more like more in flow, and heaven is the state of being between two children playing. And it's the frontal musculature of your reflex where your thymus's ability to be able to determine what's you, what's not, and acute, chronic, significant impacts where stresses in your own thinking and all sorts of things can be affecting your thymus gland. Did you ever think about that? It's a crucial organ, and it's adapted ever more to have a proper immune response and to make T cell development. And if you're agreeing, did you know, or disagreeing, it's going to be caused of ever more patterning more in your immune system? Yes, it is. You've got T4 and T8 cells, immune cells. Why don't you learn about this a bit more? Something turns on, something turns off your immune system. So agreeing or disagreeing and having a pattern to determine how easy is it for your thymus gland alone. In this example, thymic involutedness results in a reductiveness of its size. If you've got stress, you didn't ever think about this, and consequently the decrease in the production of output of naive T cells instead of mature ones. So you're modifying your emotion, and you're staying only at a 2, and you don't get past a 10 because that doesn't exist. But a lot of people just like go into 11 or something. But you keep your emotion at a level of 2, and you have far less cortisol. Yeah, why not? Why not have less cortisol? Yeah, why not? So you're causing otherwise apoptosis, that programmed cell death, to go on, And thymocytes and the developing T cells are all within the thymus. And why should you not have pleasure? Your body's going to function a lot better. So you're going to look at what you could get cleared up. Don't you think that this podcast could really help you where you are today? How about listening and going back through it? Because you're going to be making better, more working decisions, and you're going to not be a machine. Yeah, that's right. It broke. Don't fix it. It's broken. Don't fix it. It's broken. Don't fix it. That's wrong. This is something mendable. Don't force things. And why shouldn't people grow up and not treat another with, well, like I might say, something is going to cause you to feel a lot better, and how much rapport do you have to hear that? Or some people around me, like family especially, they can be certainly polarized like crazy. Why? Well, because, hey, you're my son, or you're my, whatever. You see, these are the things that go on where people's brothers, sisters, and things. But like dissidence is where you're doing what you can to control stress, and so anything said isn't in any Holbein pattern way. No. It's dissidence is like somebody just doesn't want to be around, so they dissociate, they cut themselves off, they cut you off, they cut others off. This is so violent. Oh my God. And this is a form of dissidence. So where you go to talk and bring in new information, and somebody isn't able to pick up that information, so that their response back to you, and you notice is, this hasn't caused anyone's behavior to be changed, which you would imagine it should. And when it doesn't, it's like, yeah. Who's there? Somebody in dissidence. What does that mean? They're not taking aboard any new information, generally, over it all. Why? Because they're in dissidence. And what does that mean? Managing stress. And all the behaviors about managing stress. And so what sort of behaviors does that person have? Is like, I'm going to be an ostrich. I'm going to put my head in the sand. Okay, that's called ostrich. And then you've got, wow, I woke up and something is wrong. I woke up and something is wrong. I woke up and something is wrong. It's like, oh my God. Another form of dissonance you'll straight away recognize it is somebody wakes up and they go, blame you. You're the blame. You did it. Okay, so it's evidence that here's someone they're not able to take any new information on. And how long have they been like that in their life, you see? And so you're looking at clearing all of this up for things to be work a lot better. You're not a machine. You're very mendable, and everyone else is too. Things that you're looking at is variable, not fixed like you thought whatsoever. And we're talking about everything that's demented, aren't we? Because dementia really is where someone isn't really logical whatsoever in the way they're acting or being. And so there's degrees of dementia, isn't there? And so some forms of dementia might be that, I'm immature, or I don't know that how somebody else is responding. I need to be able to interpret this in a proper way as I can, or see it. And you've got to have a great art of reframing. You put meaningfulness over anything and or context and change the meaning. You're putting a reframe over things. This is what you really should be doing in life. People who are good at that, they've got the goods to how to win friends and influence people. So we started out talking about also that there's molecules and things which is caused to come to be, molecules which cause you to have longevity. And so potential therapeutic targeting of these molecules like leptins, kinetin, which you could learn about in other programs and things, and growth factor, all have potential to protect against and reverse stress-induced thymic atrophy. So by augmenting thymopoiesis, you really empirically, clinically got things more valid. you've got a construct, a context, experts agree, you've got face validity, and you can repeat it. It's reliable, it's valid and reliable. What is it? Yeah, this is what we're talking about. So you've got a balanced approach. You're incorporating realistic assessment more where things are being challenged, and while you're maintaining really a great positive outcome in overcoming what needs to be. And so you don't have unrealistic optimism, which leads individuals to really underestimate risk and make a poor decision. It's crucial to you to differentiate, of course, between realistic sort of optimism and unrealistic optimism. It's a cause for you to have a better capacity. Otherwise, you've got toxic positivity, toxic positivity, toxic positivity. And you can see politicians and people all in toxic positivity, where whole brain functioning really trains you to more have a focus on a thirst more to be original. Yeah, nothing better. It's crucial. It's a difference between being in a realistic and having optimism and being unrealistic and being optimistic. It's toxic positivity. And so you don't want to have toxic positivity. And so it's really worthwhile saying things sometimes a bit more, so that it goes in, you're going to have sticky factor. Otherwise, you're taught the value of optimism, and really in whole brain functioning, you really got to cultivate a stronger social network. That's what this does. And you've got positive interpersonal relation, successful, and might you be making neurotransmitters so you've got interpersonal perception. And when somebody doesn't, is that because the VMAT gene and the 1p36 genes being knocked out and you're not producing neurotransmitters like you should? For success, of course, you've got to cultivate a stronger social network and have a positive interpersonal relationship. You really want relation to last, and we're talking about you being associated in life versus dissociated. Like, no, I don't want that relation. No, I don't care about you being optimistic, me either. It's like, uh-oh. And so optimism is very important because you're going to have success where your career is in relation. You're looking at your children, you're looking at people around, and you're asking yourself, how optimistic is someone versus, wow, this person pessimistic. So don't tell me that it's because of the size of shoes you're wearing or what height you got to or how much sleep you have. I mean, no. You're optimistic, good, and if you're not, you're not. So pessimism, you've got a higher risk of being depressed, anxiety, you've got disorders, you've got lower life satisfaction, yet optimism tends to have and engage a healthier lifestyle and gives you better behavior, like regulating your exercise and exercising, getting to the gym, doing various things, going out to do things, being social versus, nah, why should I do that? So balanced diet optimally comes along, and it's linked to 35% lower risks of cardiovascular disease and this sort of thing. You've got to compare pessimism with pessimists, and on the other hand, it's sort of really more prone to denial, you're wrong, I'm not listening. It's like, wow, see, pessimism causes someone to be in their brain stem and not be able to be in the frontal cortex. Okay. So whole brain functioning really is a response to activities that is bringing about pleasure and interest where things are, and you're able to cope with stress. So how about starting to focus on this now? You've never heard it before, start. And so what does that mean? It means when I hear you, I can hear how positive you are in your own self, and you've got natural chemicals which are called endorphins, beta endorphins and enkephalins, and they are your natural body opiates. And so behavior is what causes neurotransmitters, and then you've got a carried message across the nervous system. You've got hormones circulating in the blood system. You've got endorphins that combine endogenous, meaning produced within the body, morphine. You've got opiate pain relief and things, and you've got a capacity to apply life more with a guarantee that you're far more stress-free, because in the way that you're thinking about things, you're not blaming others, you're not woken up, it's wrong, or you're woken up, oh my God, that's stress, I'm going to not, look into this. And so you're engaging activity which was more joyful. You're actually wiring in ever more behavioural motivation, generator, which is releasing ever more endorphin and is a natural capacity to clear away pain. And it's a mood enhancing that you are focused ever more in whole brain patterning, creating feeling of pleasure and well-being. So your septal pelliccidum, once you look this up, it really allows the frontal cortex to be lit up and the brain, so it allows a flow across the corpus callosum. And when you have a better, easier flow across the corpus callosum, are you going to be way more exceptionally intelligent? Yes, you are. Are you going to find any of this information on Google? Probably not. It's going to say the opposite even. Oh, man. Okay. So let's be kind and gentle and allowing. Without properly functioned corpus callosum, communication between the hemispheres really is significantly impaired. So one day you're going to find that on Google. So it's leading to a range of potential challenges otherwise. So Jubb's little red book, volume 1, 2, 3, really is good. One's about identity, one's about how you build a map. The other is being in a new mindset. And that's sort of like what the gist of this work is today in this podcast. So life that's congruent and integrated, you've got behavior which is really looking for a sense of you being associated ever more in life. Wow, how good is that? You're capable to gain new life outcome. You can really learn how to wire in new behavior generator like we're talking about. You could be so associated ever more in life that you're referring to ways which individuals are connected versus disconnected, messed up, they're wrong. Okay. So we can hear straight away what degree of whole brain functioning that you have by the way that you're expressing everything. And it's involved ever more in a related contextual situation that you put things into. And otherwise, you've got a great social connection. Why? Because you're associated in life, and it's referring to ways that you're, as an individual, and things sort of as ever more connected and involved and related with a context. And so your assistance and existence ever more, and your lifespan, you're practicing more whole brain functioning. And so individuals, groups, and associations ever more, where life is giving. That's a nice word versus sharing. Giving. It's only really giving, not sharing. Like, I'm going to give you this, but I'm going to whack you if you don't do things. That's sharing versus giving. So it's a common purpose that Interests undertook. And you've got whole brain functioning training, and you've got learning which can come about, and you've got ways that you could look at things like, are you associated in life or dissociated where you're showing up? Are you associated more to your family members, or are you dissociated from all of them? Are you associated more in your own life, or are you going through life being dissociated? So individuals, groups are all associated ever more in life. They're ever more giving, and you've got a common purpose. Yes, we do. And so why don't we stay with this common purpose? It's the interest of this undertaking. So you and I ever move more into a golden age where you've got positive inductive currency. It's a bigger picture, and whole brain functioning can allow you to get there. It's this vestibular sense and the sensory motor complex where individuals are and groups are associated ever more in life. You've got a common purpose. So learn how association is so important, of course, versus, yes, dissociation you have to have ability to, but don't be remained in dissociation ever in your life, because that's just the primary form of violence. And it's the major form of violence is when you're dissociated. You're not home, you leave, you control people like that, you see? You leave them in the dark. You're a control freak, but you're only this way because why? Somebody did that to you, and you don't want to be the victim. You want to be the victor, you see? And so somebody wants to be the victor. They don't want to be the victim. And so associating a smell and certain food and all of these sorts of things are childhood memories associated with a particular color or specific mood is. And you've got rapport where you're really cared for, and you've got good social power, means people will do things for you, and you're maintaining a congruent, associated, and integrated life more. Otherwise, there's pressure to behave in ways that could have caused you to be alignment or not in alignment. So we're not going to say that people aren't pressured where things are, but true living and feeling is living congruently, living with greater awareness, and being more authentic overall. And that's so if you're more genuine, and you've got more authentic presence, of course, you're going to be creating a greater, safer place, trusting more for a therapeutic approach where things are. And incongruence occurs where there's a mismatch between the inner feeling and outer behavior. So you really need to learn how to look at verbals and non-verbal and see the parallel pattern where things are. But for incongruence occurring, you really have a mismatch between where feelings have been and the outward behavior. And basically, could you be wiring in new behavior now? Could you be learning new ways to determine and have response, which is more coming from eye awareness? You've got congruence, and you're integrated and associated in your action. Your feelings and your thought are more aligned, and it's consistent with each other. And so shouldn't you be looking at how congruent is someone, meaning how parallel processed, how integrated are they, meaning of the flow between the parts, how associated are you because of how you're showing up, like in the present. So integration is an attention in whole brain functioning, and integration is ever more aims where you've got both physical and behavioural health needs simultaneously getting recognised and having an interconnectedness, which is improving your overall outcome to have good mental health, social well-being, and things like this. So whole brain functioning is giving you an engaged experiential-based sort of learning, which is the best way to learn things, imitation, contemplation, and experiential. And so that you're picking up a capacity to have far better identification and have the ability to be able to more be good where intervention is, and where you would want people to have better mental health. And whole brain functioning is the ultimate goal, to become more super conscious, because you're really learning how to use the vestibular sense, which is a meta sense over the others. And it's no longer complex, but you become more aware. And the combination of separate individual behaviors where synchronizedness is, or coordinated behavior is as a unit, it's a model of an environmental more sound behavior, which is specific, and it's for more behavior where you're achieving a developmental goal. So do you have room? You have room. Have you used the word room? You have room inside to change. Room means you've got ethic. So you've got the vestibular programming where exercises can be ever more, and you can be achieving your goal. You've got technicians in the past who learned whole brain functioning, behavioral change, and practitioners and master practitioners, and there's manuals and things that relate more to whole brain functioning. In the hippocampus, and where language processing in the Broca area are all where non-verbal communication and optimal brain function is throughout life. You've got a supporting physical, cognitive, psychosocial well-being, and our technicians and practitioners and all those in whole brain functioning greater in their unique areas of engaging the brain, which can depend upon a task. So you're combining more contributed various areas of cognition in your processing. And so, like, if you were stuck and you just went and got and did and had, but you didn't use auditory, like, I wonder what I would wear, which you were thinking about something to wear, and you were unable to see anything visual, like, oh, I could see myself wearing that today. So it could be that's how that you made your decision inside, and what happens when you're not going through the senses in the same way. So the vestibular sense is really about flow and balance, and lexical reasoning is impacting motor skill and attention, where emotional regulation is. And dysfunction of the vestibular sense leads to clumsiness, difficulties, spatial lack of awareness, and challenge where your thinking and syntax is as you're writing or speech. It's how the vestibular sense is being used, and the locus of control, and your turning and your stopping and starting, and this is all enhanced where you've got more vestibular understanding. So whole brain functioning training really is a master capacity for you to have the ability to be able to make layers and create directions and things. And so you've got the vestibular metamodality over the top of the other senses, and the relation between the noun and the verb uses vestibular prepositions like on, up, down, in, off, and your time is suspended. These are vestibular predicates. And so how are you using them? In whole brain functioning, there's a great significance in how associated you are, like meaning how present tense you are, and how are you using direction. So integration and congruency in regulating several higher centers of your brain and nervous system. You've got an autonomic nervous system, and you've got a vagal enteric nervous system that sits above the autonomic nervous system. And so you're getting a sense of integration and balance, and whole brain functioning teaches someone ever more use of the vestibular sense. As you're focused on the predicates that's vestibular, you're becoming more aware of what the state is where someone is. And so it's really listening, ever coming to be more in eye awareness, coming to sort of complete where we are today. You're really dealing with eye aware sense, and it's being your power of attorney for your own self to be in more of your first attention and have a ring of power available to you, that you've stopped all your internal dialogue and your first attention. And so you've got access to stop, start, you have access to peace and what ceases or begins, and you're triggering ever more things from more what care is versus wanty or needy. And whole brain functioning is about physical and non-physical, like psychology, and it's not possible for anybody to pass an experience on or a memory. And so where most people are just content sorters, time, place, time, place, name, and it's kind of very boring because there's not anything structural there. And so you and I, we could really be living without a name and shape much. You could grok what this is. In eye awareness is I who is real, and I am neither with form nor formless, of course, neither conscious nor unconscious. It's sort of really an absolute unlimitedness that I am really is outside all, and of this which is of no dialogue stopped where inner chatter is, and how and whatever thoughts that have come to you in connection with I am itself is empty. And so meaning a pay where anything is not having necessary attention at all categories is possible for you to already see. And so where somebody is unconditional in their being, you're in eye awareness and you're aware is not you. It could be that it's such a way it's open to everyone and on every level and every walk of life. Everybody really is aware, and so of self, while deepening ever more, you're broadening your self-awareness. And this is the royal way. It's a call ever more for you to be more mindful and more witnessing with attention. And it's for nothing else would be ripe but unripe, and that it's not for that somebody could fail, basically. But yet it's not a technique, of course, of what we're talking about, but a meditation. It's outward lived, onward going, sitting, walking, and living. And so whole brain functioning to cap things, really ever more perfected detachment in eye awareness. And it's you, the unmanifest, and really contrary to the way of renewing a laying down or through destruction of one's inner dialogue, that's going to be better for you to do that. You've got to melt down an old way of being, like jewelry or anything, to form gold, which could ever be more new. And you've to, of beloved, of course, in awareness, you could have gone beyond the world, which is who is changing the world. It never happened otherwise, for it's really your few and a band of a committed few with some mavericks and artists around them that actually cause change. So it's impacting that lasts a long time, and all knowing and knowers of reality could reach a level of whole brain functioning, and also Jubb cell rejuvenation, which are things which we talk a bit about. But you're living in a productive I care, you care, we care, I'm lifting my hands for you, that it's very fruitful, that you have a fruitful life, and it's full of no need, so that you've got no pain. But thought compromises where it could have been, amendedness not anybody has, yet where you've got only wrong applied, you've got desire and fear, which is very destructive. But passion really destroys desire, and you've got an emotion which is empty evermore and in flow. How much your shoulders relax, how much your tummy is relaxed, and there's really only you being nobody versus trying to be somebody. And there's nobody who lives life. There really is only life, you see. There is nobody who really lives a life, only life itself. Yeah. Anyway, I hope everybody's having a really great day today, and I'm positive that you're going to pick up bits and pieces from this. I've done what I can to give like a good story to you. You'd be able to go home and have greater, deeper peace about things. And why not pass this on so that we can create a better world for everybody. Anyway, love you, mate, and we'll catch up to each other in another show. Love you, mate.